England is often described as safe, predictable, civilized, a place where danger is expected to announce itself clearly through violence, through crime, through something unmistakable. But some of the most devastating harm in this country happens without noise, without witnesses, without consequences. This is not a story about murder or physical abuse. There are no sirens in this story, no courtroom scenes, no dramatic arrests. Instead, this is a story about disappointment, about betrayal, about people who trusted the wrong couple and paid for it with their futures. Because in England, silence does not just protect victims. Sometimes it protects the most dangerous people of all. Oliver Grant and Charlotte Wells did not look like a threat. In fact, they looked like the opposite. They lived in a quiet commuter town where people nodded politely and rarely asked questions. Their home was tidy, tasteful, and forgettable in the way that safe places often are. Oliver worked in corporate investigations, specializing in internal risk, compliance, and professional misconduct. Charlotte ran a small counseling practice from home, focusing on emotional transitions, stress, burnout, career uncertainty. They were educated, calm, careful with their words, and people trusted them almost immediately. England has a way of encouraging people to open up quietly, in hushed voices, over dinner tables, with wine poured carefully and worries shared reluctantly. People don't confess here because they are reckless. They confess because they are tired. Tired of pretending everything is fine. Tired of carrying mistakes alone. Tired of holding secrets that feel heavy but manageable until someone listens. Charlotte listened better than most. She didn't interrupt. She didn't reassure too quickly. She didn't judge. People mistook her silence for safety. They mistook her calm for kindness. Oliver listened too, but differently. He remembered details, timelines, phrases. He understood how institutions react when concerns are raised carefully. He knew exactly how much information was enough to trigger action, and how little was required to avoid accountability. Together, they never pushed anyone. They never demanded anything. They never threatened. They simply waited. The first known collapse was subtle enough to be ignored. A logistics manager named Peter admitted, casually, that years earlier he had altered a report to protect junior staff from disciplinary action. He had justified it at the time. He still believed he'd done the right thing. 2 months later, an anonymous concern reached his employer. It wasn't aggressive. It didn't accuse him of fraud. It simply questioned integrity and judgment. Peter was dismissed. No appeal. No investigation. No chance to explain context. He blamed himself. Most victims did. That was the brilliance of it. Nothing that happened felt like an attack. It felt like consequences catching up, slowly, quietly, inevitably. Over the next 3 years, similar stories emerged. A teacher who expressed doubts about safeguarding procedures found herself suspended pending review. A charity trustee who admitted a past accounting error was forced to resign to protect the organization. A young solicitor who shared anxiety about a previous client was quietly reported to the regulator. Different professions, different towns, same ending. Careers stalled. Reputations eroded. Social circles tightened and then disappeared entirely. And still, no one accused Oliver and Charlotte, because nothing they had done was illegal. Truth had simply traveled to the wrong places. People who visited their house described a strange sensation. Not fear, not dread, Something colder, emptiness. The house had no photographs, no visible history, no signs of warmth. Guests said conversations felt intense, personal, and afterwards unsettling. One woman said she left feeling relieved, as if she had unburdened herself. Then, days later, she felt exposed, as if something she hadn't meant to give away was no longer hers. England teaches people to carry on, to be polite, to avoid embarrassment, to avoid accusation unless proof is absolute. So they carried on. Some moved towns. Some changed careers. Some withdrew socially and never fully returned. What broke most of them was not anger. It was disappointment. Disappointment in themselves for trusting. Disappointment in a system that did not protect nuance. Disappointment in the realization that being honest had cost them everything. The most unsettling thing was how normal it all felt, as if this was simply how life worked now. Speak too freely, and the city corrects you. Years passed before anyone connected the pattern. Emily Harper did not set out to expose anyone. She was methodical by nature, cautious. She noticed overlaps others dismissed as coincidence. The same names, the same sequence, the same outcomes. She began writing things down quietly. No accusations, no theories, just facts, dates, introductions, consequences. When Emily stopped sharing personal details, Charlotte noticed immediately. One evening, clearing plates after dinner, Charlotte said softly, "You're very careful with your words." It wasn't a compliment. It was confirmation. Emily didn't confront them. She understood that confrontation would fail. There was no crime to point to. No evidence strong enough to survive scrutiny. Instead, she spoke carefully to people who understood systems. Journalists, solicitors, regulators, always hypothetically, always without names at first. Patterns began to matter. Doors began to close quietly, not on victims, but on Oliver and Charlotte. And then, just as quietly, they disappeared. Oliver resigned from his role to pursue other interests. Charlotte closed her practice, citing burnout. Their house was sold. No farewell, no explanation. They left town the same way they arrived, politely, without drama. The damage they left behind did not disappear with them. Careers never recovered. Trust never fully returned. Some victims still hesitate before speaking openly. Even years later, there were no apologies, no accountability, no justice in the traditional sense, because nothing illegal could be proven. And that is what makes this story truly disturbing. The most dangerous couple in England were not violent. They did not scream. They did not threaten. They listened. They understood restraint. They understood shame. They understood that in this country, disappointment can be weaponized far more effectively than fear. Because fear makes people fight. Disappointment makes them withdraw, disappear, blame themselves. And in a society that values politeness over confrontation, silence over accusation, that kind of danger is almost invisible. By the time you realize what has happened, the damage is already done, and no one is coming to fix it. Thanks for watching.